All right, well, we'll start. We're just a couple minutes after 3. Thanks so much for everyone who's joined us so far. This is the Digital Shift virtual workshop with the theme of Attractions Go Virtual. So good afternoon. My name is Justin LaFontaine. I'm the program lead for the Ontario Tourism Innovation Lab. Thanks again for joining us. This is the third in a series of the Digital Shift virtual workshops. And as I mentioned, we're really pleased to have a theme today around attractions going virtual. We have tourism entrepreneurs, small businesses, organizations, and attractions joining us from right across the province. We have a full agenda and program, so I'm going to just keep a short introduction first. So first, thanks to the Ontario Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries for their support of the lab and this virtual workshop series. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Minister McLeod, ministry staff, TIO, the regional tourism organizations, local DMOs for their collective leadership during this unprecedented time for our industry and global community. And thanks to the municipality of Chatham-Kent for the inspiration and catalyst to launch this virtual workshop series. For those who have not connected with us yet, the Ontario Tourism Innovation Lab is a nonprofit initiative and tourism development incubator. We launched as a pilot in Windsor, Essex in 2018, and the lab and its Spark Mentorships and Grants program are now expanding to regions across the province. The lab is a program of Hackforge and is based at the University of Windsor Epicenter. So you can find out more about us at tourisminnovation.ca and follow us on social media. In addition to sparking and supporting new tourism ideas and experiences, one of our emerging goals is to cultivate and propel more collaborations between the tourism and tech sectors to spark new innovations, offerings, and product delivery in Ontario. To launch our tourism and tech initiative, the lab partnered with the incredible team at WEtech Alliance to launch this Digital Shift virtual workshop series. My colleague Adam Castle, who you can see on the screen there, he's the Director of Venture Services for WEtech, will be leading the second half of today's session, and he'll outline tangible tools small businesses, organizations can use to initiate and test new digital ideas. First, we're going to start with a Zoom side chat with Shift expert Laura Fielding, Senior Manager Marketing at Science North. She will tell us about their efforts and experiences as a major attraction going virtual and what's next as the province reopens. I'm pleased to welcome Laura, and I'll let her provide an introduction to Science North, and then we'll get into our conversation around going virtual at Science North. So Laura, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. I am Laura Fielding, the Senior Manager of Marketing at Science North, and Science North is it's Canada's second largest science center, and we also are home to the 8th largest science center with Dynamic Earth, which is located 5 kilometers roughly from our Science North location. We are Northern Ontario's largest attraction, and we have been the successful winner of Attraction Ontario's #1 attraction for 2 years in a row consecutively, voted by our visitors. We've been established for 35 years, and we are recognized nationally and globally for our blue coats, which are our science communicators with our organization, and they are our brand ambassadors. And we've been delivering fun and engaging science across Northern Ontario and now all over the world in this new shift that we've had with COVID.
Great, well, thanks so much. And I also will say that you, Laura, are one of the mentors for our Spark Mentorships and Grants program for our Northeastern Ontario region as well. So thanks so much. You've been a great supporter of many of our programs, and once again, so glad to have you here today. So we had talked in prep for this session around your attraction. You know, often attractions are driven by in-person visits by hundreds, if not thousands of people per day. And when COVID-19 hit and the spring, right around March break, which I understand is a particularly busy time for your attraction, you were faced with a very different scenario of operating and engaging with your guests. So maybe start us off with how things sort of evolved from, say, February, March, and then into as we became further locked down through the spring, how your attraction reacted and how it engaged your visitors.
Yes, so it was not easy for us to close our doors because we were just opening up to the busiest year that we have, the busiest week within the year that we have leading up to March break. And one of our revenue streams is also the building of special exhibits. And so we build a new exhibit every 2 years. And this year we were fortunate that we partnered with Ripley's Entertainment and the Science of Guinness World Records to bring the Science of Guinness World Records to launch for our March break period. And we had just opened it, launched, and within 5 days, we had to close our doors for the COVID scenario. So we immediately shifted to virtual, which we have been active in, but delivering, our messaging, our communications, continuing the conversations with our visitors to keep them engaged. And we started doing Facebook Lives and continued with a program that we started in February of 2020, and that is Gen Learn Stuff. And so we were dabbling in these areas of new programming formats while watching our visitors' behaviors and what their appetites were like for our content, serving relevant content, given, we are science communicators, and delivering information around COVID and what was happening in the world. So we established virtual programming over, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. It took us to recognize that there was definitely an appetite for what we were providing and delivering to our visitors. So we now have weekly 1 to 2 Facebook Lives, depending on the content and the work required with our partners. Every 2 weeks, we have Gen Learn Stuff, which is geared to our younger demographics, and she has quite the following that she has built up over the past, 5 months. We have animal ambassadors at Science North that are loved by all of our visitors and really bring a large component to our engagement numbers. And everybody was interested in what they were doing. So they've taken over our Insta stories and an Ask a Blue Coat format that's been a great success. And partnerships are very important to us. And we partnered with Laurentian University, which is here in Sudbury, and we did a whole series on Let's Talk About COVID. And each week we had different topics that we were talking about: the effects of COVID with your animals, the effects of COVID for underprivileged individuals in your communities. There was probably 6 to 8 of those sessions. We partnered with Ontario Science Centre, and we did what spring looks like in April in Northern Ontario versus what it looks like in Southern Ontario. So bringing the best of both science centers together. We've partnered with Ripley's as well. We partnered with Monterey Aquarium, and we have had special guest astronauts. We've had 2 or 3 different astronauts that we have come on and done our Facebook Lives. And that with our Facebook Lives was a learning curve as well, because at the beginning we didn't have a mediator, and then dabbling with the formats and watching our numbers change or the engagements with the questions that we received during these Facebook Lives, we were able to monitor what our audience wanted and alter the programming to what their needs.
So, and I should also say, Adam is going to be fielding any questions from all the folks on the call today. So if anyone on the call has a question, you can raise your hand, send in a comment, and Adam will chime in with your question. You mentioned you started out with some Facebook Lives, and then that kind of evolved into some more online programming and outreach. Did you have this virtual program, like parts of it anyways, already underway before the world changed in March? And what was the learning curve for you and other staff I certainly, and all of us, I'm sure, on the call today, have learned a lot more about the functions of Zoom and Facebook Live and all of those other things. As an organization, and with your staff, how did you kind of get through that learning curve and start, as you said, making adjustments based on the response from your customers?
Yeah. Well, like everybody else, we were not prepared. We did not have the script written for this. But over the past year and a half to 2 years, I would say that our team in the digital realm and on our social media platforms have been working towards different programs to offer to our visitors. And this really just put us on steroids and really had to get us moving and build the momentum. So there was a big learning curve for us to understand which platforms were best, how we would do the interviewing scenarios. Did we make mistakes? Yes. But did our audience or our visitors have negativity towards it? No. I think that in this time, being real and showing, having transparency still is very valuable for us. I know we had one that we did outside and the sound just wasn't right. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be great. But everybody loved it. It was, you're allowed to make mistakes. And this is a time that we can and learn from them on the fly. So that's what we have done with the different platforms. We use Zoom for our interview type Facebook Lives. We have done, then we also take all of our video content and we have grown our YouTube channel. So that was a goal that we've had over the past, I would say 3 years, is to, build on that YouTube channel. And now we've seen significant growth with it. Same thing with, we wanted to do Instagram live stories. We just haven't had the time or the capacity to do it. And now here we are and we're seeing success. I can share some stats with you on our engagement, but we have been very successful on those social platforms, learning and dabbling and making mistakes and owning it. And it's turned out very well for us.
And how has it impacted, the virtual programming, the reach to your visitors, your kind of existing pool of folks that knew about Science North and visited and beyond? How has it impacted you overall as an attraction?
So our regular visitors, our members, our community are very happy and excited when we can see it in our comments and with our engagement scores. We have had great reach. Our top 5 countries that we have seen over the past 4 months are Canada, the US, India, Brazil, and the United Kingdom. We have, we can, as we all go through our analytics, we've had a couple of shout outs from a family in France, and due to the COVID pandemic, we now offer our camps virtually, and they've bought a virtual camp for their kids. So had they not engaged with us on a Facebook Live, they wouldn't have known about our virtual camps and been following us. So that's a nice success story. Our engagement has increased on Facebook by 3%, which the industry standard is 2%. And that's a 40% increase over the 4 months prior to COVID. And on Instagram, over the past 4 months, our followers have increased by 5%, and we've gained over 500 followers. And our engagement has increased 31% on Instagram to a 2.2% engagement rate. So things have done well for us.
It's kind of amazing. We've heard from partners and businesses all around the province how the growth of their social media networks and followers has really been quite strong this over the past few months. And great to hear that all the things that you do and what you represent in Ontario is reaching globally. And I'm not sure if the impact or the reach globally was ever really there before, or if this is somewhat of a new audience for you.
Well, Canada and US definitely have been our top 2 countries. I will share a little insider information. Um, our digital specialist, who is very successful, has been very successful with all of our social media, Renata, actually comes from Brazil. So I think we have a great family and friends following from there.
You also mentioned the virtual camps, and I think for everybody on the call today, whether they're a small business, organization, or another attraction, could you describe a little bit more of those? You know, certainly I know in my family and my sister and brother with kids, with the lack of summer camps out there, they've been kind of struggling to find things to keep them busy, especially on those maybe cloudy and rainy days.
Mhm.
Could you tell us more about those and how they're offered and the costs and that sort of thing?
Yep. So looking at the new business ways that we are and not knowing back when we had to start making plans and, doing something different, taking a risk, camps were kind of taken off of the option list for summer. Things have changed and evolved as the months have gone on and the phases have changed. But seeing the success that we had with a program that we did in part with the Ministry of Education in delivering e-learning workshops for kindergartens to grade 8. We took a page out of that book and we built virtual camps and doing our research and looking what the market was doing, like that's on the hour at that time, seeing what's out there, like the times that kids would be engaged. Is it morning versus afternoon? The price point. So we have established virtual camps that have done well. And we just actually released yesterday our August programming. And we have kids engaging across Ontario. And like I said, now in France. And they are, the price point is off my mind. I believe it's $75. And they're an hour and a half in length, but I can confirm that as we're on our chat.
Sounds great. I think a great pivot. And again, I know many of my personal friends and family are all keen to learn and find out about those things. And certainly in my network, we'll be sharing those as well. And even if you have any specific information, we can include them in the follow-up email to everybody on the call today. So if there's any links, we can share those as well.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about, you mentioned platforms and, Facebook Live and Zoom. Any kind of learnings, do's and don'ts, around that? Certainly there's lots of different options out there and people, again, businesses or organizations are looking, at what might work best for what type of function. Do you have any kind of thoughts around that to share?
We're still dabbling. There are a lot of platforms there, when we first went into COVID, Zoom wasn't as secure. Now Zoom has put security parameters into their software. So that has, given good comfort in our Zoom. Platforms that we use for that. We were just getting ready to engage our adult audiences as well. We have a very strong brand and events that we have annually, and it's Nightlife on the Rocks. And we host 6 of those, and we open up the Science Center to adults 19 years of age and older to interact with the exhibits and the Science Center as a whole. There's food and beverage. They're all themed, lots of tongue-in-cheek. And so we were getting ready to do an evening event virtually with them in July. We've shifted it just due to what the market has been sharing with us now that we're not hermits in the early spring. But we were looking at doing an YouTube Live. And in there you can share links, and you can do the same thing with Zoom. So for us, it's really having an idea, finding out what the goals are of the event or the event, and then figuring out which platform delivers the best. And it just seems like every day, we're thinking of doing the Nightlife on the Rocks. Okay, we're looking into YouTube. Next thing you know, we're served on our business account that we can now host paid events or secure events on Facebook, where we thought that wasn't an option. So it's staying on your toes and staying up to date, because everybody's changing and competing and trying to be in this virtual space. So I think it really does come back to what your goals are, what your needs are for that event, and researching it.
And you mentioned nightlife on the rocks. It sounds like an awesome opportunity anytime for folks that visit you up in the Sudbury area. How does that happen virtually? How does it get promoted, and how do people interact?
So we were going to, again, we've canceled our July one just due to the current situation, and being able to now open up, and the parameters that we put, we are looking to possibly opening that up into our fall programming. But had we gone with the virtual, it was going to be for 19 years of age or plus. We were looking to partner with local food and drink partners, whether that's local craft brewers, breweries, and put together some packages that the guest would pay for, and then they would pick them up at Science North or the designated establishment in their community, understanding that this is an opportunity for us to go across Northern Ontario as we deliver our programming across Northern Ontario. And then you would have a reference number to sign in and log in to, let's just say it was Zoom. And then our blue coats and our partners would entertain you for an hour to an hour and a half. And that would be through a science demonstration, DIY at home, or build along with us. There would be a beer and, not beer, but a beverage and food component of tasting. And then we have regular partners, Nickel City Trivia, that he would come on and do a trivia component. We have a great DJ, and she'd provide, the music component to it, and see what the appetite was like for the virtual event. Not to say virtual is out of the runnings for when we do go back to regular programming, because I think one of the great things to come out of this is the reach that you get. And so now we're not, just Science Sudbury. We have been Science North for a long time, delivering programs to Northern Ontario, but now we're able to be on the radar and delivering programs across Ontario and beyond.
Well, it's a great segue to, we talked about the doors opening for the first time this past weekend, since I guess it would be March. So this is the very first open weekend, and how your doors are open, but what are the plans around the virtual programming and marketing, even as you get in-person visitation coming back?
We will continue. Maybe we'll be a little bit less active. Those are things that we're monitoring and watching as we go into the different phases. But we have on average 2,000 to 3,000 people that are engaging with our videos. Those are great numbers. And so they're still there. And yes, the timing of when we release our videos in future state might not be the same timing, because our visitor habits are changing, but we only hope to continue to grow and evolve the success that we've had over the past 4 months, and continue that way. We have opened up our doors, and we did 2 weekends to our members only, to show the great value and support that they give to Science North, and also to watch their behaviors and make sure that all of our protocols and processes were buttoned down. And then we opened up this weekend to the public, and they're excited to be back in the Science Center. There's been positive comments that they have been staying connected with us virtually. They've enjoyed what we've been delivering. So the visitors still want it, and it is great content, and we have a brilliant organization of people just with wealth of information, and the connections we have around the world, that we can bring great content and relevant content to people all the time.
Awesome. You mentioned too, when we spoke in the preparation for this session, about the kind of the shining stars. You have a couple of folks that are representing Science North through these virtual sessions, and you know, the big personalities, if you will, or characters. It strikes me that those people, you know, might continue in that role to be essentially more amplified ambassadors and continue to do more things. Is that you know, a plan, and you know, what are your thoughts around how that grows over time?
Well, that's actually going back to your first question, was how we transitioned into such a virtual world. And it was, you know, everybody has a different personality, and people don't like the camera, people do like the camera. Introverts become extroverts when they're put on a platform, and we needed content. And you know, everyone's adjusting to our new ways of working, and you're working from home, and you're working with children, your children at home. You have that part of it that you're trying to, you know, figure out what that new routine looks like. And then you have us knocking on your door, not physically, but we need you to help us produce our social videos. And you know, there was no, I'm not good at that. Oh, I'll try it. I can't be good at it. So we actually brought out a lot of great new video people that are really enjoying it. And they're, you know, we have a new roster of our Blue Coat Live, we'll call them, individuals that, you know, that you can pivot quickly with them. You can get them in front of the camera. My team is very good at the scripting and working through and the key components and the messages that we need to have delivered. So that's really been great. But we have like probably 3 or 4 that they will be a consistent face and voice for Science North. We've been fortunate. We actually had a segment with him during COVID, and it's Franco Mariotti. He's been a Blue Coat, an employee of Science North for, I should know the number off the top of my head, but many, many years. And he was so known in our community, and the followers of the viewership that we had the day that he came on and did the re-greeting story of Sudbury and the history of Science North. It was just really nice to watch we'll call him the veteran, come out and, you know, a proud Blue Coat. And we have many of them that are really outgoing, and Jen has done very well with Jen Learn stuff. And, you know, that was something that was, well, we'll give it a try. Let's see if it works. And now our visitors want it. Jen has a great personality, and she's bilingual. We'll be doing our first French segment in early August. So there's lots of benefits to it. We've brought a lot of people that thought that they weren't capable of being on camera and delivering the best, and they've been really enjoying it.
Amazing. Well, certainly, and you mentioned this a few times, it's been a time of experimentation, innovation, trying things out, and having kind of a receptive visitor audience, knowing that we're all kind of in this together and all learning together as well. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's such a unique time for, you know, innovations, essentially. And it'll be fascinating for us to watch how this rolls out with Science North, and, you know, how the virtual programming continues to sort of connect and combine with your traditional in-person programming as well. Adam, we are, I see, just after 3:30. Do you have any questions from yourself or the audience before we wrap up this great conversation?
No audience questions, because I think the conversation has been so valuable. What I want to know though is as you're choosing different things and different experiments to take a look at, how do you do that? What's sort of that process behind the scenes? Because you have so many people, there must be so many great ideas coming out of Science North. So how do you pick which ones to go with?
So over the past 3 years, we've been working on a content calendar, And the content calendar drives, it earmarks special days that we need to recognize, not need to, we want to recognize, National Beaver Day or something with it's going to be a full moon. So it's Pi Day. So we have those days established. But on top of that, my team works very closely with the science communications team on a weekly basis to pull out those ideas, and there could be 3 or 4 of them for a segment that we're going to do, but narrowing it down to relevance, what is attainable on the workload of everybody within the organization. We figure out what we can do. If there's partners, maybe this month we can get Adam and Justin to be available to us, and maybe we can't, so we'll have to shift that to next month. So it's springtime, it has to do with the sea. There's so many different things that we take into account, but it's a collaborative initiative that we do, and we're both in constant contact, and something could change on a fly that, we need you here now because this is so amazing, and then that becomes the segment. So we're nimble and easy to shift around pretty quick, but there is a lot of planning that goes into it. Gen Learn stuff, for instance, probably takes, I would say, a week and a half in total, from planning, scripting, video editing, and then ready for production.
It's awesome. It sounds like you keep your goals so constant that the channels by which you use to make those things happen don't really change. Actually, we have a quick question here. So it says, Laura mentioned that people with many different personalities, introverts, extroverts, deliver the social media experiences. Are there any tips that you have for helping people be more natural in front of the camera when they might feel naturally uncomfortable?
Yes, that's a great question, Chloe. That really works twofold. Is one, if it is content that they are passionate about, then you will get the best out of them. Working with our blue coats that might be introverts, to give them the lay of the land, how things are going to play out, the expectations of them. If you make a mistake, we're able to edit out. That really does get them into their comfort zone. But with many of our blue coats, if you give them the topic that they're most comfortable with, you could probably videotape them for hours. They just have such great information to share. And with the scripting, we do work alongside our blue coat, depending on the topic, to get out, what are the top 5 things that if you had to share with someone about this northern turtle, what would it be? And so being able to get those, 4 or 5 tidbits out of them and know that that's the areas that they're going to focus on allows us to stay within our time parameters.
What are the top 5 tips about that northern turtle?
I don't know them.
I'm going to have to look it up because now I'm curious.
There's a segment on it that we did.
Perfect. Awesome. No other questions on my end.
Maybe that's a good time to wrap this section of the virtual workshop up. And in terms of where people can find these videos and all the other information, can you share your website and any other social media accounts that people can discover Science North?
Yep, in the next couple minutes, I'll put them into the chat. And I just thank you very much for having me today.
Great, and we'll share, again, those links with in the follow-up email to everyone after this call as well. So thank you so much, Laura, and all the best up in Science North and with all your programs. We'll be following and participating and certainly sharing within our family and friends. So we really appreciate you providing your insights and experiences as we've gone through this really unprecedented time. With that, I will hand the reins over to Adam Castle again, who's the Director of Venture Services for our partner WEtech Alliance. And he's going to run through the Digital Shift tool, which I think you'll all find very interesting, essentially a way to test out new ideas and look at the results. So Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us today. I love the conversation, especially with what we're going to be talking about. It's very much scientific experience and scientific methods sort of put into practice. So as Justin mentioned, my name is Adam Castle. I'm the Director of Venture Services for WEtech Alliance. And I spent the last 7 years working in economic development and really have worked with hundreds of companies across our region in Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent, mostly on growth strategy and business development. WEtech is a regional innovation center, so we're actually one of 17 across Ontario. And our mandate is to help tech companies scale and grow in Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent. We're also so excited to collaborate with the lab to bring our customized business development tools and templates to a province-wide tourism sector audience. We work with a lot of startups at WEtech Alliance, and what we're going to teach you here today is really a framework that we see them using, we teach them to use in order to rapidly test out new ideas in a way that's relatively safe and low risk. You know, there's going to be some time at the end of my overview to ask questions, of course, as well, before we sort of jump into the rest of the talk. I wanted to start out today by framing up what we define as a digital shift. So for a very long time at WEtech and around our network, we've said that every business is a tech business, even if they don't quite know it yet. And what we mean by that is that taking technology and putting it at the very core of what you do as entrepreneurs, perhaps your products or services aren't tech forward, but now more than ever, small businesses really need to incorporate technology in order to ensure your value can still be delivered in safe and, most importantly, sustainable ways. So let's sort of dive in here. So we believe right now that there's such a value in thinking like a startup because startups operate under a few really key principles that help them excel under uncertainty. In fact, many believe that early startups are already businesses. They function, they're up and running, but truthfully, they're just organized experiments, organized scientific experiments. And they really want to test out their assumptions. They're searching for a business model that really fits their product. So they teach us to do a couple things. The first is disregard the status quo. They really want you to make sure that you're sort of thinking outside the box and getting outside of your comfort zone. The next is to be curious and make mistakes and get messy. And all of you science aficionados here will know those words from the Magic School Bus, which literally taught me every single thing I know. And finally, what they really, really want is to make sure that when you fail, and we all do, and it happens, none of our ideas are going to be perfect all the time, but when we do, learn deeply about that failure, about that stumble, and pivot into something better. Now, as many of us are beginning to open businesses back up, you know, you may be in a region that's entering sort of phase 3, or maybe you're entering or still in phase 2, like we are here in Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent. But one thing that we're seeing across all of our sectors is the need for businesses to really employ more flexibility than ever before. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what a second wave looks like. And so this doesn't always mean more technology. 98% of the cases, it's going to. And so developing the ways to deliver that magic and value of your business through technology, it's really vital to being prepared for the next wave. Not if, but when it comes again. And so instead of going back to normal, we must all instead learn to really move forward, embrace change, and create new tools to ensure our businesses can be sustainable long term. Now, I want to take a couple of minutes to focus on the how of idea creation. This is some feedback that we got from our earlier sessions. We had many that loved the tools but didn't really know where to start in creating an idea for their own shift. And I was lucky enough to watch a presentation from Duncan Wardle last year at a conference. Duncan is the former head of innovation and creativity at Disney Global. I really encourage you to check out his TED Talks. But what you'll hear him talk about is that creativity is a process that's often made nearly impossible through overthinking. You know, in baseball, you'll often hear coaches yell, "Try easier" to batters at the plate. And I love that as sort of a personal phrase I'll use to remind our clients to approach creativity and sort of a problem solving with curiosity and openness. And so one of the easiest ways to go about trying easier is to stop to invent something or stop trying to invent something that already exists. True genius is more than not iterative. It's a process. It's innovation, not invention. And R&D in this case stands for research and duplicate. For inspiration on your next experiment, look out for things that already exist and are being leveraged and innovate on ways to make those things work for you. Personalize them to make them work for your business, your attraction, your organization. And so you've all received a copy of our digital shift workbook that we provided to you. Now, a lot of this information can actually be found inside the tool itself, so we can just sort of go through it and chat it out right now. We started the tool with a couple of pieces of Mad Lib entertainment for you, and it's really important to standardize these two cornerstone statements: the hypothesis, here's the science, and your value proposition. They're going to help you guide as your standards across every single experiment you run. Now, we recommend that you run all of these experiments for a minimum of about 4 weeks so you can really properly assess them. So let's get started. So starting with our digital hypothesis, what it really is just a fancy way of saying that this is my best guess, or these are my best guesses. It helps us to clarify what we assume. And the beautiful part of this tool is that it isn't just for your biggest and best ideas, but it can actually be used for any idea you want to test out within your business. So before something comes core to what you do, it's really important to test everything to make sure what it is we think is actually the same as what we know. Now, this is the same method we've taught to hundreds of startups who traditionally have very few resources outside of their amazing brains. You know, there's this myth that you need a bunch of funding to start a tech company, and that has 100% been proven false. The same goes for these experiments. They are low cost and low risk. And we put a framework around these things because it helps you to really understand what's worth doing long term and what maybe needs to be retired at the end of the day. Now, the hypothesis is actually what scientists use when they're doing their experiments. As well, you might remember from high school science classes, but really what you're going to go through at the beginning of each experiment are these sort of fundamental pieces. So using Science North as an example, we can see that, you know, they really kept their goals the same. And there's a couple things from our conversation that I think are super important. The one is that they built on the people and the ideas that they already had around them. So they didn't go scrambling looking for a whole bunch of new stuff. They said, we've got goals, we've got targets, we have things we already know we want to talk about, and we've got some things on the back burner that could potentially really work well for this. And so they believe that science education and entertainment can be delivered virtually and in a new hands-on way that really delights their target audience while keeping them safe, according to the COVID guidelines. Now, what they were going to use in order to do that, you heard, are all these various forms of online platform and products available for physical purchase. So they looked at ways to marry how can we keep things hands-on and how can we go about things in a safer way using sort of social distancing and all of the virtual tools that are sort of at our disposal. And the hope was that this is going to drive continued science education within sort of their region, but also expand their reach to way far beyond what they ever sort of imagined was possible. And they're going to test it out by looking at the business and customer feedback of their partners. You know, you heard her mention how important partnerships are to them. Look at your participation numbers, your repeat customers, and whether or not there's a funnel action that's happening, right? Does someone that see our Facebook Live end up driving into the funnel that makes them buy one of our virtual summer camps? Those are all super important, and this is sort of how they laid out their overall plan. Here's how we're going to test out some of these experiments. So moving into our value proposition, which is super important, some of them call this sort of the elevator pitch. And really what we're doing here is we're framing up what we want to deliver. It's the North Star statement of all your experiments and your business itself. It really helps build everything from the marketing and communication messages to products and further innovation. And so what really matters most is that if you stay true to the value you initially wanted to deliver when you create your ideas, you're not going to get lost on even the most adventurous of digital shift experiments. You know, in the case of the Science North at home, we of course want to serve local consumers who want convenience and sort of new and accessible ways. They're looking for high quality interactive educational entertainment. We want to make sure that it's friendly for families and adults and children alike because we've got all of these different segments that we serve. And, you know, we're really looking to make sure that our new at-home offerings provide a distinct Science North experience with all that safety in mind. You know, we really want to teach and delight and expose participants to new and exciting knowledge. And we want it to be unlike anything else that's science-based in entertainment available throughout Ontario. And what's really cool is that everything that they do, they sort of set it up to be trailblazers. And, you know, in the conversations that we had sort of setting this up, one of the things that they had mentioned was that, you know, they're working hand in hand with a lot of the other science centers across Ontario to help them take on their own digital shifts. And that's sort of the best part about this, is once you learn that process, you can continue to sort of share that outwards or share it forwards. And so with these key pillars in place, even though they're deceptively simple to fill out, I really encourage you to take some time to plan them carefully. Now, we're not going to fill out the rest of the tool quite as particularly as we did with the first two pieces, but I hope it gives you an idea of how to outline what you're actually going to want to adapt and how you can adapt this to your new ideas. So setting up these first two key statements is absolutely crucial to be able to get the most out of this tool. So moving into our customer control group, you don't want to roll out experiments to every customer that you have. It's more time and effort invested into something that may or may not be sustainable long-term. So you want to choose your control groups very carefully and ensure they represent a good variety of your overall customer base. So use this box to define some factors you're going to use to determine the sample size and customers you're going to test this out with. And what customer segment you're going to test. This, of course, changes from business to business and from experience to experience. Now, we have lots who are really trying to target and figure out exactly how we're going to determine whether or not there's a good fit for this experiment. So you want to move into the channels engagement piece. So this is where communication comes in, and communication is everything as a small business. You can connect with your customers in direct and productive ways. So what's the best way to get the word out about your new offering? And how are we going to hold our customers' hands to ensure that they have the experience we want them to have? So what's really interesting here is that giant businesses like Apple and Amazon only wish they had the same kind of control you have for getting feedback from your customers. As a small business, you're really able to directly connect, and that means all of the feedback you get is firsthand and so incredibly valuable. Data doesn't have to be big to be valuable. So you're going to use this box to answer the question around how you plan on getting the word out to let your customer control group know about the exciting new idea. So moving ourselves into metrics, the effectiveness of business experiments really depends almost entirely on your ability as a business to observe outcomes. The absolute beauty of being a small and relatively small business is you're working directly with your consumers, right? We mentioned this. It's that you can observe more effectively than any other business out there. It's a superpower for driving innovation. And one of the things we always tell our clients is that if you treasure it, you measure it, whether that's revenue or customer satisfaction, referrals, repeat purchases, or profit margins. What you measure will change based on your experiment. What's really important is to ensure that you are able to measure easily and that you make the time needed to digest all of that beautiful data that you're creating. And I can't really stress this one enough. Taking the time to work on your business is just as important as taking the time to work in it. In this box, you're really going to list the things you intend to measure in order to ensure you've got all of the information you need to decide whether this experiment is something wonderful or worth letting fizzle out. Now, moving into our workflow and mechanics portion, this section is really your how, and it's the perfect space to get very particular about the execution of your experiment. You know, there's a very old joke that asks, how do you eat an elephant, and ends in one bite at a time? Pause for laughter. So your experiments may seem like an elephant, so breaking them down into very small bites can really help. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, so I suggest taking the time to break everything down into tasks. If you're having trouble identifying tasks, start out by asking yourself which steps need to be performed for the project to be finished and working backwards. So breaking down a project according to the crucial task really helps you to divide it into larger chunks or milestones. You may notice that we actually included in here a 30, 60, 90-day tracker as part of your workbook. Now, once you have sort of the basics laid out in here, you can break it down even further using this timeline. So take everything week by week, step by step in your experiments, and use what you learned from this week to power changes and tweaks you're going to make next. So in the tracking section, you're going to be identifying everything based on the metrics you define. So tracking the overall outcome is that you've observed the date measured because you're going to do this more than once over the life of the experiment, of course, and the change plus or minus from where you first started. And then really any additional notes you may have on the process. The point here is to look at whether or not your initial beliefs were correct. Was your best guess right? And we really hope that this process provides you a ton of opportunity to learn. So by tracking these things carefully, you'll be way more likely to remember the finer details when it comes time to assess all of the results. We recommend, again, running these experiments no less than a full month to be able to draw the best possible picture of its effects. And when you say run it for a month, what I really mean is 1 month in the hands of your customers. So the setup doesn't count for the overall runtime. Moving into results, by answering sort of these 3 key questions that we have here, you should really be able to make somewhat of a judgment call. Do you want to lean in, learn more, or halt? Leaning in means growing the experiment into a full-time offering. Learning more means extending the experiment, changing up some things maybe of your approach, or plugging in new answers into your map so you can make new adjustments in terms of what you're assuming. And halting is in no way seen as negative. In the world of startups, yeses and nos are equally weighted as valuable because of the hard data they can provide. It's really the maybes that are sort of the absolute worst. So if you decide the experiment is a halt, we hope you also decide to take your learning lessons and apply them to your next big idea. Rest assured, though, you're going to have so many more big ideas. Actually, there's a lot of research on this that says that just tracking ideas, putting things down on paper or digitally, actually acts as a greenhouse for growing more of them. So creativity is really this muscle that can be exercised and improved on like any other. The box, of course, for your next steps is really simple. Do you create a system to scale this up, roll it out to all of your customers, or move on to the next sort of aha moment? Now, remember to come back and finish this past piece as soon as everything's done after you've made that decision. Speaking of making decisions, there's a second part to this tool entirely. So this actually comes in the form of what we call the digital shift calculator. So this is an Excel file, and the calculator is designed to be super intuitive, easy to use. It's all about less so of the numbers, the hard numbers. We know that you know whether or not something's a good idea based on the math. You're brilliant business owners. You've been doing it a really long time. So what we really wanted to do was measure some of the softer factors that we've seen are really important in order to help you inform your decisions. We developed out these 9 factors to really assess the long-term sustainability of your experiments. It's super easy to do. You really just score your experiment across all 9 factors based on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, of course, you strongly disagree based on your evidence, and 10 being you strongly agree based on the evidence. It'll calculate everything for you, and you'll really get a score at the bottom on a scale of 1 to 100. Based on that score, you should have a pretty good idea whether or not something is worth pursuing or needs work to hit more of these factors in a meaningful way. So we really designed this tool to be a standalone for you. We want it to be something that you can come back to time and time again, use and exercise almost like a muscle, and something you can go through on your own. But also a reminder that we still have 2 more of these workshops. We're going to gear them towards different industries under the tourism umbrella, and we really encourage you to sit in on those other workshops as well to get some different takes and different conversations on. We also have a link at the end of our workbook to a directory of all the small business enterprise centers across Ontario. So your local SPEC has a ton of staff that can really help you gather resources as you develop out your experiments. I also wanted to mention that Digital Main Street, which is a program that's rolled out across Ontario now, is available and can really help you take on these amazing digital shifts of your own. So something to keep in mind. Awesome. And at this point, I will turn things back over to Justin.
Thank you so much, Adam. You're awesome. And for those on the call today, if you're located in Windsor, Essex, or in Chatham-Kent, you can reach out to WEtech Alliance. They are the network tech organization in this area, and in the documents that Adam had sent prior to the session, you'll be able to see the link as well there. And I'm also going to ask Adam, I don't know if you can maybe flash on the screen the tools just so that people know when they open up their email, what to look at and what to expect.
So I did try and do that. For whatever reason, I'm having a tech glitch and I can't share the screen right now. So it was, yeah, there's some sort of lag. I think my internet's a little slow today.
So there are, so maybe if you could just describe what they have in the email. I think it's 2 documents.
Yeah, for sure. So that first document is the shift map that we described. And actually what I'll do is, Justin, as you wrap things up, I'll send another link through here to link it into the chat so everyone can download it again.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Adam. Again, he's a super experienced and inspiring guy with lots of great ideas for entrepreneurs and small businesses and attractions and everything in between to use those tools and a workbook to test out those new digital shift ideas and innovate and adapt and pivot, you know, as we are going into different phases and possibly different scenarios and waves in the 6 months to year ahead. Thanks everyone for joining us today. As Adam mentioned, we do have another 2 of these virtual workshops coming up. The next one is on Tuesday, August 18th. So stay tuned to our social media and website for the details on that. But as Adam mentioned, for each one of them, we've kind of focused on a different subsector of the tourism industry. So today we focused on attractions, and was awesome to have Laura from Science North join us. Laura did share on the chat a number of links for their website and YouTube channels and other social media connections as well. So I encourage everyone to check those out. And when they're up in the Science North area in Sudbury or one of their satellite locations across Northern Ontario, highly recommend to check out their offerings in person as well. So with that, thanks everyone. We'll be sending the evaluation and follow-up email to you all. So we appreciate your feedback, and also just I hope that you found this session both informative and inspiring, and hope that you can join us next time. To learn more about the Ontario Tourism Innovation Lab and our programs, you can go to tourisminnovation.ca. We do have a number of new regions that we're going to be announcing the Spark Mentorships and Grants program rollout happening this fall in Ontario. So stay tuned. In the meantime, take care everyone, and good afternoon.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Stay safe everyone.